The Unofficial History of Sacha Timony. Part 2. On the Road. Sacha stood at the crossroads, looking up at the signpost. Her heart fell as she thought of the possibilities she might miss if she made the wrong choice. All around her seemed quite still. The sound of the cool night breezes through the blades of grass was gentle and soothing, and she began to forget her urgency as she imagined each possibility. Crack! The stillness was broken as the sound of a whip cut through the night behind her. A moment passed, and she could now make out the sounds of cartwheels and horses' hooves on the cobbled street. One of the big people, dressed in a leather jerkin and tall, black boots and a tricorn hat, was sat at the front of the cart, and the horses he was driving had a mad look on their faces as they ran along. Sacha leapt from the road into the grass and watched carefully as the cart approached. Beads of water dripped from the tips of the blades over her head and splashed down onto the cold earth. He must be in a hurry, she thought to herself. Still, he must be going somewhere. Somewhere with food and a fire, hopefully. This was her chance. She stepped carefully forwards, crouching to make herself as invisible as possible. Eyeing up the cart, she pulled her pack around and reached for her rope. If she could time it right, she might just be able to hitch it on and climb up. She began to twist a loop into the line, her eyes fixed onto the approaching vehicle. Just then, though, there came a soft but not altogether friendly sound from behind her. A low growl was making the air vibrate. She froze on the spot. There was the unmistakable sounds of enormous clawed feet tensing. She turned slowly to look. A pair of cold, dark eyes were looking at her through the tall grass. Sacha's whole body began to tremble as she reached for her pin. It was stuck, though, and she could not pull it out. Looking down, she saw the tie was still in place around the pinhead. She began frantically to untie it, but looked back as the tone of the growling shifted. The beast was moving. There was no time for it. She rolled to the side as the animal pounced. Landing hard on the soil with one arm under her, she looked up to see the creature circling back again, a fixed look in its eyes. Its body lowered as it prepared to pounce again. Sacha stood up, untying the pin as she did, keeping firm eye contact with the beast. Slowly, she drew her weapon and tensed for the attack. The sounds of the cart were getting louder now, and the ground beneath her feet was rumbling with the rolling of the wheels and the stamping of the horses' hooves. The growl was almost lost in the cacophony as the creature lowered its body, its long tail swaying in the cool night air. It leapt. Sacha jumped, bringing the head of the pin down hard on the animal's head as she grabbed at its fur and pulled herself up. For the briefest of moments, she was running across its back. It was an unsteady road for sure, but she only had to keep it up just long enough to... She jumped, reaching for the cart. Her body jolted as the cat, unable to perceive its prey, sat bolt upright and began to look around. The extra force threw Sacha high into the air, and she saw the street below her as she tumbled headlong, landing hard amongst the barrels and boxes on the cart. Her body ached. The wooden boards beneath her rumbled as the cart rolled along the cobbles. A rattling from the boxes sounded very much like glass bottles, and the casks were dripping with a thick, strong-scented brown liquid that splashed down beside her. Her heart raced as she lay there and watched the stars high above. The shouts of the driver rang in her ears, and frantic neighing and whinnying of the horses surrounded her as the exhaustion of the fright darkened her eyes and she fell fast asleep. When she came to, it was to the sound of chattering and shouting. She sprang to her feet and looked around. The sun was now high up in the sky, and the air smelled strongly of... salt? She clambered to the edge of the cart and peered over the side. She was in the middle of a busy market square. The cart, now sitting at an angle, was free of its driver and horses, though luckily for her, no one had come yet to unload it. She could see the horses some way away, drinking water from a trough. A group of traders were talking close by. Something about the price of wine. Sacha made out the driver among them. His voice seemed as harsh in his negotiations as his whip had the night before. She looked past the people, though, to get her bearings, and there she saw it, silhouetted by the sun. A ship, taller than a forest, the people hurrying up and down the gangplanks looking tiny next to the vessel. Its sails were furled, and there was quite a to-do going on as it was loaded and unloaded. "They must be getting ready to sail," she whispered under her breath. "Could I get in, though? They would see me for certain." She looked about her. There wasn't much time to decide. It was always possible that these crates and casks were meant for the ship. Perhaps if she hid inside one of the boxes, she could be carried on. Then again, if they weren't, then who knew where she might end up? She could try sneaking off the cart and through the side streets. She didn't know Midport at all, but she guessed there must be some way to the dock without being seen by the big people. Then again, maybe she should take her time. She could find a house here and stay for a few nights. There would always be other ships, and that way she could take her time to prepare. She was broken from her thoughts by the sound of footsteps. The driver was coming back. She would have to decide on a direction quickly.
This story is written by Clephane. For this and more, as well to vote on where Sacha should go next, consider backing Clephane on Patreon for as little as £1 a month.